The air in the White Tower does not smell like history. It smells of wet stone, of the River Thames seeping to the mortar, and of old, cold iron. But deep in the basement, in the summer of 1546, the air is thick with something else. It smells of sweat. It smells of panic. And it smells of a law that has just been broken. Listen closely. The sound you hear is usually the rhythmic grinding of a winch, a heavy wooden wheel turning against the resistance of human bone. It is the sound of the rack. But tonight, that sound has stopped. In the flickering torchlight, we see a scene that should not exist. Sir Anthony Kingston, the constable of the Tower, a man whose professional life is defined by the infliction of pain, has stepped away from the machine. He looks down at the woman stretched across the oak frame. She is 25 years old. Her joints are already loose, her breathing shallow. Kingston looks at his own hands, then at the other men in the room, and he shakes his head. He refuses to turn the wheel again. The silence that follows is heavy, dangerous. It is the silence of a hierarchy collapsing. Then the silence breaks. It is not broken by a scream, but by the rustle of expensive velvet. Thomas Wriothesley, the Lord Chancellor of England, the highest legal officer in the realm, the man who carries the great seal of the king, steps forward. He is frustrated. He is desperate, with a snarl of impatience. He throws off his heavy ceremonial gown. He rolls up the sleeves of his doublet, exposing soft, aristocratic arms to the dungeon's filth. He pushes the constable aside. The Lord Chancellor of England grabs the levers of the rack himself. He signals to his colleague, the Solicitor General, to take the other side. And then the sound returns. The grinding of wood, the tightening of ropes, the terrible, popping tension of ligaments being asked to do things they were never designed to do. This is no longer a legal interrogation. It is a descent into madness. The most powerful men in England are sweating and straining in the dark, breaking their own laws to break one young woman. And the terrifying thing is, she isn't screaming. She is staring at the ceiling, her lips moving in silent prayer, refusing to give them the one thing they want. This is the story of a system that panicked. It is the story of how the machinery of the state was turned against a single inconvenient voice, and how that voice became the only thing that could not be crushed. If you want more stories they tried to erase, consider subscribing, because history is often written by the victors, but the truth is usually hidden in the margins. To understand why a Lord Chancellor will become a butcher in a basement, we must leave the dark of the Tower and step into blinding, stifling heat of the royal court. It is 1546. London is sweltering, a city holding its breath. At the center of the web sits Henry VIII. But this is not the golden prince of the portraits. This is a man rotting alive. He is obese, paranoid, and in constant agony from ulcerated legs. The king is dying, and everyone knows it. And when a king like Henry begins to die, the court does not grieve. It plots. The corridors of power have become a shark tank. Two great factions are circling the throne, waiting for the inevitable end. On one side, the reformers, who want to push England further away from Rome. On the other, the conservatives, led by men like Bishop Gardiner and our Lord Chancellor, Wriothesley. They are terrified. They see the future slipping away. They need a victory. They need to destroy the reformers before the king takes his last breath. But their target is too high to strike directly. They are hunting the queen herself, Catherine Parr. They believe she is a secret heretic, a woman poisoned the king's mind with radical ideas. But you cannot accuse a queen of treason without proof. You cannot drag a queen to the block on a hunch. You need a witness. You need a thread you can pull that will unravel the entire tapestry. And they found that thread in a woman named Anne Askew. They looked at her and saw an easy victim. She was young. She was a gentlewoman, but unconnected to the great houses. She was unprotected. They believed that if they squeezed her, if they applied just enough pressure, she would crack. She would name the queen's ladies. She would name the queen. They viewed Anne Askew as a tool to be used and discarded. They did not realize that they were grabbing a live wire. We must strip away the Victorian myths that have covered this story for centuries. History often paints Anne Askew as a meek, trembling martyr, a passive victim of male cruelty. The reality is far sharper and far more interesting. and was not arrested because she was holy. She was arrested because she was loud. Picture her not in a cell, but in the nave of Lincoln Cathedral. She sits there openly reading a Bible in English, an act that was technically legal but culturally rebellious for a woman. When priests approach her to scold her, she doesn't lower her eyes. She quotes scripture back at them, dissecting their theology with a surgeon's precision. She was a woman who had already walked out on an abusive marriage, leaving her husband and her home to seek a divorce that the law would not grant. She moved to London, used her maiden name, and inserted herself into the intellectual circles of the city. She was brilliant. She was abrasive. She was dangerous. The trap they set for her was theological, but the stakes were lethal. It centered on the Eucharist, the bread and wine of the church service. The law, the king's law, stated that the bread literally became the flesh of Christ, and believed it was a symbol. To the modern ear, this sounds like a trivial difference of opinion. In 1546, it was a difference between life and death. To deny the real presence was heresy. It was treason. When they first arrested her, they expected her to crumble. Instead, the transcripts of her interrogations read like a dark comedy of errors. She runs circles around her accusers. When the Lord Mayor of London asks her a foolish question, she laughs at him. When Bishop Bonner tries to trap her with a paradox, she answers with a riddle. She uses her gender as a shield, smiling and saying, "I am but a woman, I cannot teach you," while simultaneously dismantling their arguments. She was mocking them. She was winning, and that was her mistake. In the eyes of men like Riotously, a woman this confident, this well-read, and this stubborn could not be acting alone. They became convinced that she was being supported by the highest ladies in the land. Her intellect didn't save her. It convinced them she was the key to the conspiracy. The mood shifts. The legal skirmishes in public courtrooms end. The decision is made to take the gloves off and is moved to the Tower of London. We need to pause on the significance of this. It was illegal to torture a gentlewoman. It was unprecedented to torture a woman of her class who had not been convicted of a crime. But the law is only as strong as the men who uphold it, and the men in charge had stopped caring about the rules. The atmosphere changes from the dusty, dry air of the courtroom to the cold isolation of the fortress. The world shrinks. First, they take her light. Then, they take her letters. They leave her in the dark with her own thoughts, waiting for the sound of footsteps. This is the psychological tightening. They want her to feel the total weight of the state pressing down on her chest. Riotously and Richard Rich, the Solicitor General, come to her cell. They are no longer acting as judges. They are inquisitors. They stop asking about bread and wine. They start asking about people. They ask about the Duchess of Suffolk. They ask about the Countess of Sussex. They ask, again and again, about the Queen. Who gave you money? Who taught you these heresies? Who else reads your books? And give them nothing. She tells them that a man in a violet coat gave her 10 shillings, but she doesn't know his name. She tells them her maid gave her bread. She responds to their demands with prayers and silence. She knows exactly what they want. She knows that if she speaks a single name, she signs a death warrant for another woman. The frustration in the room is palpable. You can feel the temperature rising. These are powerful men. They are used to being obeyed. Their careers, their political survival, perhaps even their own lives, depend on getting this confession. And this girl is beating them. Frustration in powerful men often mutates into cruelty. They decide that if her mind will not break, they must break the vessel that holds it. We return to the dungeon. We return to the rack. We must look at this clearly. The rack is a simple machine. It is a frame of oak raised off the ground. Ropes are tied to the wrists and the ankles. As the windlasses are turned, the ropes pull in opposite directions. The intention is not to kill. The intention is to stretch the body until the joints dislocate, until the muscles tear, until the pain is so all-consuming that the mind shuts down and the tongue simply obeys, and is lifted onto the frame. The constable, Kingston, initially oversees the procedure. The wheel turns. The ropes tighten. The sound of fibers stretching. The sudden, sickening pop of shoulders leaving their sockets. And is asked for names. She says nothing. They turn it again. The pain is now blinding. It is a white-hot world where nothing exists but agony. And still, she refuses. She faints. In a standard interrogation, this is where it ends. The victim is passed out. You revive them. You let them recover. You try again tomorrow. But riotously is out of time. He orders her revived. He orders her back on the machine. This is the moment Kingston refuses. The constable of the tower, a man who has seen everything, says, "Enough." He turns to leave, perhaps to go to the king, perhaps just to get away from the horror of it. And this is where the Lord Chancellor throws off his gown. Riotously and rich, two lawyers, two politicians, grab the handles. They are not experts. They lack the professional detachment of the torturer. They are angry. They turn the wheels with a frantic, amateurish violence. They pull Anne Askew so taut that the witnesses later say her bones and joints could be heard snapping across the room. She is literally being pulled apart. For what? For a name. Just one name. The Lord Chancellor leans over her, sweat dripping from his face onto hers. He demands a queen's name and opens her eyes. She is broken, unable to move, unable to feel her own limbs. But she looks at him, and she says nothing. It is a battle of wills, the brute force of the state against the quiet, iron resolve of one woman. And the state is losing. Riotously turns the wheel until he is exhausted, panting in the damp air. He has destroyed her body. He has made it so she will never walk again. But he has failed. The silence in the room is absolute. They send her back to her cell. They leave her on the floor because she cannot sit. They expect her to die, or at least to vanish into the delirium of pain. But the most extraordinary part of this story is not the torture. It is what happens next. Lying on the floor of her cell, her body ruined, and Askew asks for a quill. She cannot move her legs. Her arms are swollen and useless. Every movement must be agony. Yet, somehow, she manages to write. Or perhaps she dictates to a sympathetic jailer or a maid. However it happens, words begin to appear on paper. She writes an account of what happened. She details the questions. She names riotously. She names rich. She describes the rack. She describes the illegal questions about the queen. I sat 2 hours waiting on the bare floor. She writes, "Then they did put me on the rack, because I confessed no ladies or gentlewomen to be of my opinion, and thereon they kept me a long time. And because I lay still and did not cry, my Lord Chancellor and Master Rich took pains to rack me with their own hands, till I was nigh dead." She turns the weapon of the state back against them. Riotously wanted a confession to destroy the queen, instead, and is writing a testimony that will destroy his reputation. These papers are smuggled out of the tower, hidden in the soles of shoes, tucked into bundles of laundry, passed from hand to hand through the dark streets of London, while the Chancellor plots his next legal maneuver. Anne's words are already being read by the public. The city is horrified. The rumor spreads. They racked a gentlewoman. The Chancellor did it himself. The mood in London shifts from curiosity to a simmering, sullen anger. The government has overplayed its hand. They broke the rules to get a secret, got nothing, and created a martyr instead. They cannot let her live. She is now living proof of their crime. If she survives, every time she is seen in a wheelchair or carried in a litter, she is an indictment of the king's justice. The order for execution is signed. The date is set. The place is Smithfield. Smithfield is a place of meat and blood, the city's livestock market. But today, the crowds are not here for cattle. They are here for the burning. The crowd is massive, a sea of faces stretching back to the timber houses. There is a heavy police presence. The authorities are nervous. 3 men are to be burned with her. They walk to the stakes. But then, a hush falls over the crowd as Anne arrives. She does not walk. She cannot. She is carried through the crowd in a wooden chair. Her body is so broken she cannot even stand upright to be chained. 2 sergeants have to lift her from the chair and hold her up against the stake while the chains are fastened. It is a pathetic, infuriating sight. A young woman, destroyed by the law, being propped up just so they can kill her. A preacher mounts a pulpit to give the final sermon. He shouts at her for an hour, condemning her heresy. And even now, chained to the wood, and Askew refuses to be passive. When he speaks a truth, she nods. When he speaks an error, she shakes her head and audibly corrects him. She is debating until the very end. Then, a final moment of tension. A letter arrives. It is a pardon from the king. If she recants, if she just admits she was wrong, she can come down. She can live. And does not even look at the letter. She turns her face away. She says she did not come here to deny her lord. The wood is piled high, but there is one final grim detail. Sympathizers, perhaps even agents of the queen she protected, have bribed the executioner. They have tied a bag of gunpowder around her neck. It is a mercy. It means the end will be an explosion, not a slow roasting. The torch is applied. The wood crackles. The smoke begins to rise, obscuring the woman in the chair. The crowd holds its breath. The tension that has been building since the first turn of the rack finally snaps. The fire roars up. The powder catches. And then it is over. The fire dies down. The crowds disperse, muttering, shaking their heads. But while the physical body of Anne Askew is gone, the political fire she lit is just beginning to burn. In the immediate aftermath, there is a scramble for safety. Riotously and Gardiner look at their handiwork. They failed. They tortured a woman illegally. They burned her publicly, and they have nothing to show for it. They have no confession. The queen is safe. Catherine Parr survived the summer. She nurses the king through his final, miserable months. When Henry dies the following January, the conservative faction expects to take control, but they are pushed aside. The new regime, under the boy King Edward VI, is aggressively Protestant. The irony is bitter and absolute. The extreme violence riotously used to save his cause actually accelerated its demise. He dies a few years later, pushed out of power, a man whose legacy is forever tied to a torture chamber. The system that crushed and simply moves on. It finds new enemies, new victims. It forgets the pain it caused. But history does not forget. Years pass. The printing presses of Europe begin to turn. Click-clack, click-clack. The sound is rhythmic, mechanical, like the rack. But this machine does not break bodies. It multiplies words. The examinations of Anne Askew, the paper she wrote on the floor of her cell, are published. They are smuggled back into England. They become a bestseller. People read her words. They read about the Chancellor's sweat. They read about the constable's refusal. They read her riddles and her prayers. And Askew becomes a defining narrative of the English Reformation. She becomes the gold standard of courage. But more importantly, she establishes a precedent that echoes down the centuries to us today. The right of the individual to remain silent against the overwhelming power of the state. She proved that you can break the body, you can crush the bones, but you cannot force the conscience to speak if it chooses to remain silent. The men who killed her thought they were erasing her. Instead, they carve her name into the bedrock of history. We end today not with the fire, but with the chair. Imagine Smithfield as it is now. The timbered houses are gone, replaced by glass and steel. The smell of burning wood is replaced by diesel fumes. But stand there for a moment. Close your eyes. Think of that wooden chair, sitting empty in the middle of the square. Think of the silence of the woman who sat in it. We often ask ourselves what we would do in the face of tyranny. We like to think we would be brave. But true bravery is not a battle cry. True bravery is sometimes just a refusal to say a single word, even when every nerve in your body is screaming for you to speak. And Askew lost everything. She lost her husband, her home, her body, and her life. But she kept her secret. She protected the women she served. And in doing so, she defeated the King of England. If you want more stories the world tried to bury, hit subscribe and tell me what you saw in this one. The screen fades to black, and all we hear is the sound of a single drop of ink hitting the page, loud as a cannon shot.